academy. After that odd little cup, the one used in the Silver Circle ritual, was stolen, something in Gill had changed. Val had been so caught up in the idea of finally realizing his own dream that he hadn't noticed at first, but he'd worked it out eventually. Resignation was something Val had seen often in Trelane. People doing the same thing day in, day out. They accepted it because they knew there was nothing else for them. Resignation might have made the drudgery easier to bear, but it killed something inside. The thought made him feel nauseous. He should have stayed, should have helped, but he hadn't. Gill had known exactly how to tempt him away, and he'd gone. Regret wasn't much use now. Val knew he'd likely be dead now if he'd ridden out after that last dragon with Gill. No one had ever done a selfless thing for him before. That was why Gill was a hero, more so than any of the old chevaliers with their glittering breastplates and magical swords. He put others before his best interests, and Val knew it had probably cost him his life. He loved Gill for that. He stopped his horse again and turned south, looking back at the mountains he had come from. There, he knew, Gill had fought the last dragon, near a village no one had ever heard of. But Val knew. He knew the village was called Vance, and he would be sure to tell anyone who would listen what had happened there, where the last of the chevaliers of the Silver Circle had faced the last of the dragons. Val chuckled to himself. He knew he gave far too much weight to the old stories. Now he was getting carried away by having been a bit player in a new one. Even he, a lad of 16 summers, perhaps 17, he couldn't be sure, was too pragmatic to take all that romantic nonsense at face value. He'd need to empty his head of such thoughts before he entered the academy, or the other students would think him a country fool. Giving the mountains one final look, Val prayed to all the gods that Gill still lived, that the dragon was slain, and that there might be some hope of the man finding whatever it was his life was missing. Val was determined not to look like a wide-eyed country bumpkin as he rode into Mirabay. He didn't have much money, but he knew what little he did have would be stolen in the blink of an eye if he advertised the fact that he was new to the city. As discreetly as he could, he asked a patrolling officer of the watch for directions to the address he wanted, then did his best to appear as though he knew his way around and that the short sword at his hip wasn't merely for decoration. The officer said the address Gill had given Val was located on the southern bank of the River Vosges, near the Academy of Bannerets. Just the mention of the academy got Val's heart racing with excitement. He had dreamed of going there from the moment he had first learned of it, and now it seemed he was about to realize that dream. He kept his excitement contained as he rode along the dirt street at a modest pace, one that he thought befit a young gentleman. What little he knew about the nobility came from watching those who had passed through the Black Drake Inn at Trelane, where Val had been employed before convincing Gill to take him on as a squire. Despite his high spirits, Val couldn't help but detect an air of tension in the city. People glanced about furtively, as though they were on the lookout for someone or something. Val presumed it was the dragon and wanted to laugh out loud at their cowardly behavior. Although he was not too proud to admit the beasts terrified him, especially the ones he had seen up close, the nearest one was miles and miles away. Even flying, it would take at least a day to reach Mirabay from the mountains, perhaps longer. Val wasn't certain how fast they could fly or for how long. Even then, there were plenty of farms and villages to keep it interested along the way. He reckoned it would be weeks before a dragon had cause to be within 100 miles of the city, assuming it still lived. The houses lining the street were fine, far grander than anything in Trelane. Val started to wonder about the man Gill had sent him to. He was obviously very wealthy if he could afford to live in a neighborhood like this. But then again, Gill was a lord, and everyone knew lords were wealthy and only hung around with other lords. Eventually Val found the house he was looking for, a pale stone edifice pocked with ornately framed windows. Large slate-grey double doors sat at the centre of the facade, with a smaller wicket door set in one of them. He dismounted and rapped the heavy bronze knocker, then stood back to wait.